Hello friends, today we are going to talk about a fantastic western from 2010 called Jonah Hex. Enjoy watching it. Late 19th century, 1876. During the American Civil War, Jonah Hex fought on the Confederate side until he betrayed Officer Quentin Turnbull by failing to carry out orders to destroy the hospital, in the course of which his son was killed. The vengeful Turnbull and his right-hand man Burke burned down Jonah's house along with his wife Cassie and son Travis to teach him a lesson. Then they decided to let him live but brand Jonah by leaving the initials QT on his cheek. Hanging there for a long time, the Warren Indians released him from that cross almost dead. The shamans did what they could, but they couldn't bring him back to the way he was. He was not immortal, of course, but now he could talk to any dead man. Though it's not very pleasant, only the dead will tell you the right way. Jonah was looking for Turnbull, but he was craftier than that. He burned up in a motel, leaving Hex with a thirst for unfulfilled vengeance. So he became a bounty hunter, bringing justice, if paid of course. That's how his story began. Jonah arrived in the town of Stank Creek to get a reward for his order, but the lusty village authorities decided to kill Jonah because they paid twice as much for his head. Here he felt the trap, so he dodged a sniper's bullet from the tower and unleashed his machine guns on horseback, shot the wretched officials and still took his money, but he noticed the sheriff's star, so he decided to give it to an ordinary kid from the village. But his dream of being sheriff ended the second Jonah blew up the administration building. Jonah, by the way, is wanted and is promised a reward of $500 for him. On the locomotive so far all is quiet, but when the officer enters the carriage to the high society, one of the children notices that near the train jumping bandits on horses. The officer tries to reassure everyone by convincing them that their soldiers are outnumbered, but at that time bandits' accomplices appear from the crowd of soldiers on a separate carriage who shoot the soldiers and threaten them with a bomb, and ahead of the train the same man named Burke is almost finishing installing the explosives. And the bandits have already made their way into the steam train itself and disconnected the other cars, after which the man detonates the explosives. After a while, the lieutenant reports to the president that one of the survivors from the train recognized Turnbull. The man faked his death. Gettysburg has changed Turnbull. If before he advocated protecting people, now he has started attacking hospitals, schools, churches. There's a big holiday coming up in 10 days, so they should find Turnbull in that time frame, because he's cooking up something big since he robbed the train and the warehouse with their weapons. But it will be hard to find him directly, so the president asks them to find Hex, because the fate of the nation is in his hands. Jonah himself, meanwhile, is drinking alcohol and the drink spills out through a hole in his cheek he made when he brandished a tomahawk. The man at the bar is about to overpower our hero, but is immediately shot. Hex tips the bartender and leaves. At this time, hot girl Leila finishes her session with one of the men who has a crush on her, but at gunpoint she drives him away and asks to come back tomorrow for her next session. But Jonah immediately comes to her. They turn out to be old acquaintances, and after a hot night, Leila asks to go with him because she doesn't want to lose him again, but Hex refuses because everyone who is around him dies sooner or later. The military bursts into the room. Hex immediately shows how set he is, but the soldier tells him that they know where Turnbull is. When Hex arrives at the barracks, Lieutenant Grass tells him that they almost learned from the dead man where their commander is. But Hex uses his talent to calmly talk to the already dead guy and finds out where one of Turnbull's charges is. And when Hex returns to the lieutenant, the latter, in shock, goes to check on the dead man's condition while Hex has already galloped off to the northwest. And when he stops for a drink, in frightening memories he reimagines rips off his branding with a tomahawk. Turnbull is already prying into the whereabouts of the warhead detonators he'd stolen earlier from one of the government employees. Hex, for his part, has arrived at the illegal fights, in which the bouncer and the snake man take part today. But Hex has little interest in this, as he's come for his target Colonel Slocum, not to kill him but to find out the location of Turnbull, but when he won't tell, Hex dumps him in the arena with the mutant. He leaves the arena, freeing the caged dog, who, in gratitude, accompanies him to the cemetery but won't go any further. He heads inside for help from his former partner Jeb Turnbull. After a brief skirmish, Jonah apologizes for killing Jeb in the war. Jeb forgives him and tells him that Turnbull is at Renaissance Fort, then goes back to the other side. And Leila is in trouble, as the man she chased away earlier has bought her back from her former owner and wants revenge, but the girl kills him. Jonah buys a new weapon from Smith's gunsmith acquaintance, a small, improved crossbow that shoots explosive arrows. Smith notices that Jonah's hatred of the Union arose not from loyalty to the South, but from an unwillingness to obey government orders. John arrives at Fort Turnbull and notices the blueprints for the deadly weapons Turnbull plans to use on July 4th in Independence Bay, the day the United States of America knows hell. John is lucky enough to meet Turnbull, but he doesn't get a chance to fight him, so he has to deal with his pawns, but after them comes the sweet moment of revenge, but his right-hand man Burke shoots Hex, so our hero retreats. And after a very hard night, he dreams of fighting his nemesis in a bloody field, but even there he is defeated. The living Turnbull, meanwhile, comes to check on his superweapons. First the usual shells fly, people don't understand what they are but take to the streets, and then Quentin launches a detonator that literally wipes out the settlement. The president is reported 394 casualties and assumes that a future attack by Turnbull will be, alas, impossible to predict. Leila writes a letter to Hex, but a new guest, Burke, arrives and beats and kidnaps the girl. And Hex's service dog leads the Indians to him, who perform a ritual on him. Jonah is resurrected out of sheer hatred for Turnbull. Then Jonah sends a telegram to Washington about Turnbull's intentions to blow up the Capitol with a superweapon. Hex himself heads to the heart of the future attack and says goodbye to his beloved animals, and then pursues Burke and follows his trail to the ship, in the hold of which Turnbull gets rid of his government aid and immediately begins preparations to set the ship adrift. Burke attacks Jonah and directs him to the blades, then revives the corpse and burns it from the inside out. And when Hex climbs the ship and aims at Turnbull, he takes Leila at gunpoint and Hex gives up. 3 minutes to go until the shot is fired. Shooter Steve is preparing for the president's speech with the kids at this time. Hex wakes up next to Leila, who without delay picks her lock and reveals that her name is Tallulah. Leila is her nickname. At this time upstairs, the naval guards demand Turnbull surrender, but he has no intention of backing down, so he gives the order to prepare a gun and shots are fired at the lieutenant's ship and then a detonator flies. Hex and Leila defeat the guards and she asks him to follow the gunner while she covers him. And while Hex straightens upstairs with a flamethrower, Leila gets rid of the enemies in the hold. Hex is grabbed by Turnbull and ordered to make 50 volleys, and falls down with his enemy himself. And Leila tries to overpower the gunner, but it fails. Turnbull beats up Hex, and with each blow he imagines the fire in which his family burned, and then the man gives the order to fire the detonator. And while Leila was trying to reach for the axe, she accidentally pushed it straight at Hex, with which he managed to fight Turnbull off and stop the launch. And then, with the sweet scent of revenge, clamp Quentin in the cogs and finally save his love, with which he escapes and the ship explodes right from the inside, giving the citizens of the United States a chance to rejoice in Independence Day. After a while, the president gives the award to Hex and asks him to stand in for the country's chief sheriff, but Hex refuses and goes off to his Tallulah. And a few moments later, visits Jeb's grave, apologizes to him for his father, and rides his horse away from the cemetery with his dog. Subscribe to the channel, like and comment on the video. I'll definitely answer you. Thank you for watching, and I'm not saying goodbye.